Welcome to yet another episode of Tour Fry. My name is Jay, and last week I was with a sellout. This week I am with Isela. What up, Chuck?
Firstly, before we pendula, is this all directed at me?
Firstly. Who else? Who else is on this podcast? Is this directed at me? Of course, it's directed at you.
Then call me a champion. That's
champion.
Who I am.
Hey, champion is used loosely these days. I suppose you are a champion by hook or by crook. Congratulations, though, Mr. Orland Pirates.
Thank you very much. Hi, Jay. Hi to listeners, viewers, everybody. Coming from me, the champion. It's been a good weekend.
Let's get into it, right? Let's get into that big match of the weekend. Of course, Orland Pirates coming through with a hat-trick of MTN8 titles, winning through on against Stellies down in Mbombela. No, not in Mbombela, down in Moses Mapida.
Mm-hmm.
Chuck, how do you feel about that one?
I'm good. I'm happy. I'm ecstatic. It's good to get the early ones in the bag because I mean there's no other thing to push your season, right? Going into the group stages of the CAF Confederations Cup was good. We await the draw to see who our foes are. But silverware is good. I'm happy about the boys' performance. I'm happy with the fact that I think like many of the Pirates fans look at that starting lineup and you're like, is this the strongest Pirates side that we can put out? Because you've got Mfukeng on the bench, you've got Mabasa on the bench, and you're wondering, is this enough? And you look at the back line as well. The fact that we held fort. I mean, I don't know, even if we had Ndai, because Ndai is amazing, would he have stopped Mujela? Because Mujela is like probably the most informed player in South Africa right now. I don't know. That would have been like a very, very good test to see. A very stable defense against someone who's on fire right now. But apart from that, we did just enough to hold them and keep them at bay, score just that one goal. But I think generally as a side, we played well enough where it wasn't a cagey game. We tried to play, we tried to create chances. Obviously, Stellies are a good side themselves, so it wasn't going to be easy going. So I'm happy by the fact that we played not our strongest side. And this is the question of depth, because that's the thing about Pirates. When you put out their strongest 11 and then you go to the bench, besides Kabelo Dlamini, who else are you going to bring on to spark the game or bring it to life? Happy to see that we can trust someone like our striker, Evidence Mahopa. Happy to see that we can play Hoto up front, and he's not going to be as bad as he was prior, because I think he's grown in confidence. He's shown that his attitude and his application is one of the most dependable players in a black shirt. So I think those kind of tweaks made me happy. We are still competitive against a very dangerous Stellies side. But all in all, man, to be champions is great, because you can say we played well, but in the end you have to convert, you have to lift the silverware, and you have to be crowned champion. So happy.
Yeah, in terms of how that final went from the Stellies side, I was a bit disappointed with the way that Stellies played. Mostly it had to do with that midfield. I thought the gap between the defensive line and the midfield was far too wide, and it was very easy to play through that midfield. I expected more from Unduli, who is the replacement for Ox. Jabbar is back from his loan, and he started the game with Unduli, and then later in the game, I suppose Steve Barker, recognizing exactly what I'm talking about, he brought on Butsaka, recently signed from Cape Town Spurs, of course. But yeah, I think they could not deal much with the play of Pirates in the middle of the park. Although I'd actually say the same thing about Pirates. Pirates weren't very good in stopping Stellies going the other direction as well. In terms of how or where they decided to attack Orland Pirates, a lot of they play, or a lot of their attack was focused on that right-hand side of Pirates' defense.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't much change backline from Orland Pirates, and you wondered to yourself, can they be exploited? I thought that that defense can be exploited, particularly when you're missing Unda, who in my opinion is the best centre-back in the PSL. I don't think actually he should be playing in our league. He should be at a higher league. So he was missing, and you had then Munyane as well, who came in for Dino van Rooyen, and I don't know if there was a nego with Dino. I didn't get to pick that up, but if there wasn't, that's an interesting call from the coach that maybe he might be too emotionally invested in this one against his former team. But then on the other side of Usisane, who's been playing alongside Unda, you had Usbisi come in and you had Umayela come in at left back, and Uhoto was sent to the front. But that left-hand side of Pirates' defense with Usbisi and Umayela, I thought that was the weakest part of that defense. And I think Steve Barker and Stellies missed a trick by not attacking more down that side as opposed to the other side. Because on Munyani's side, Munyani at some point he wasn't overlapping as much. He was staying a little in his own half and offering that defensive protection. So here alongside Usisane, I thought that axis was stronger than the one of Usbisi as well as Umayel. And I think, as I'm saying, Stellenbosch may have missed a trick by not attacking down that side a lot more as they were on the other side. But when they did go in attack and when they did have those overloads, it was hard for Pirates. The interplay, especially in tight spaces, is quite good. It's one of the best in the country because they get the ball into that final third, and once they're in that final third, they try to set up those triangles, especially, as I'm saying, in short distances, even around the box, and try to pass it into the box. And they didn't quite score a goal off of that because their goal was a spectacular one. Is Pepeto that came from Mujela, who seems to deal in spectacular goals. A throw in and there's a melee in the box, and the man who steps up, the moment of magic is that man, you know. And the other disappointment was in the way they conceded the equalizing goal to Saleng, because Sage Stevens, who I've been advocating for to get into the Bafana squad, I still think that he should, even though he conceded 3 goals. 1 or 2 of those shouldn't have been goals, but that equalizer, it's a free kick from Ohoto, and he parries it straight into the path of Saleng. Whereas, I mean, for a man of his caliber, the expectation, I know it's not the easiest thing, but for a man of his caliber, the expectation is that he's going to parry it outside of danger. But that didn't happen. Pirates equalized, they come back into that. I always thought Pirates would equalize, though, because I did think they were the superior team. They looked very dangerous when they were on the ball. They just could not figure out the final third part. And I think part of that is the fact that when Pirates are running with the ball, then they are looking to slip in. Their striker, Mkhopa, is not the guy who's hanging on the shoulder of the centre back and looking to make runs in the channels or behind the defense. And so it was a little confused in that manner, which is why when you see Mabasa, who is alert to matters like this, he finishes, you know, and ultimately wins the game for Orland Pirates. But interesting, the personnel selection from Coach Riveiro. But I think the reason he went with that is because as new as this season is, Orlando Pirates have already played 11 games. By the way, 9 wins and 2 draws is quite the record to start the season. But a lot of those players already have a lot of miles on their legs. And I think for a team that is looking to compete deep into May next year, of course, they'll be defending the Nedbank Cup. Of course, they want to be in the championship chase, which they started 3 games, 3 wins. And that is only, you think, if they're going to be in it, going to be decided in May alongside Mamelodi Sundowns and whoever else might still be in the race at that point. And then, of course, still playing in the Champions League. They'd want to be playing still in the Champions League in March, in April, and in May. And if you're gonna be competing on all fronts with the hopes of winning those competitions or doing well in those competitions, you need depth, you know. So it's quite the arena to test out your depth in a cup final, but it may stand Orlando Pirates in good stead going forward. But as I'm saying, there was a gamble for me, but it's a gamble that ultimately did pay off. And congratulations to Orlando Pirates for making history. First team with back-to-back MTN8 titles.
And I think we keep this one. So let's see if MTN design a trophy quicker than the Betway Premiership. Let's see whose trophy comes out first. I don't think MTN are obliged to do anything before the next season. I think with the selection, if I were to take a shot at what was going on there, I think he was going for industry because finals tend to be tricky. Number 1, 2 Stellies play very well on the counter. They got speedy wingers. I thought to myself that the game would have been won and lost on those said wings, because if you're a Pirate, you want to push Mojela up as far back as you can, have him be occupied or nullify him. You want to push Hoto up as well. You want to push Munyani up as well. because that's where each team has their pace. Stellies have Titus as well, and in that regard. But there was a lot of ball played in the center of the park, and so we saw a different game in terms of what we were expecting. But what you get from Hotto, from Saleng, and Mahopa is industry, whereas Mabasa stays up top to be fed the ball, and then Usale Mfukeng doesn't really he's not a physical presence to go into tackles like that as much as you'd want, and he's there more as an offensive presence. So I think he wanted to contain the game, and not if things do go wrong, like a goal down, then we can contain some of that and do somewhat damage control versus just fight fire with fire. So I think they held up very well up until we got the equalizer. Yeah, man, a couple of talking points defense wise. OCBC, ever since he got dislodged from the starting order, because I think he used to play regularly, but no Kloki. He was Kloki CBC for a long time. Then when it was Nda and Kloki, and now it's Nda and Sisane because of injuries. Confidence not quite all the way there. Also, when you had the stint at Bafana, you were like, you are not quite the player you were at your best. So he's still struggling for form in terms of being the best he can be. Maela, though, question marks, because he's never going to go forward and give you that overlapping run or that presence high up. Unlike Moloi Sane for Stellies, who was everywhere. Moloi Sane takes corners, takes throw-ins. Moloi Sane is building up attacks, and I thought to myself, if ever there was a place to exploit, it's that space there, because he's probably not there. He's doing a lot. He's the new Tao Matlawa. He's doing everything. A decent player as well, who I think at some point needs to be called up by Hugo Broos to give us some X factor if we need some. But also we know about Bafana, if it's not broken, don't fix it, because they've got good players already there. But Pirates converting, Jay, obviously there's that contentious moment, right? I want to say this and get it out the window. Every team looks for an advantage. Whether even if the throw-in is 2 centimeters behind you or 20 meters behind you, everyone tries to take an inch. And for as long as
it's not contentious, Chuck, it's blatant.
For as long as the referee
blatant,
not blowing
not
for
contentious,
it,
blatant.
For as long as I mean, if the referee would have said, hey, retake that, we would have taken it at the correct spot. But because everyone is trying to do what we did on the night and we got away with it, that's okay.
Got away with it. Listen to the language. Chuck, do you feel good about getting away with that?
Yeah, because we didn't cheat.
You feel good about it?
Yeah, we didn't cheat. We just took a yard that everyone else takes in the game. Everyone takes... I mean, that's why the spray was introduced.
5 yards, not a yard. 5 yards.
That's why that spray was introduced. Stay as far back as there, because everyone takes that inch. It's part of the game. It's what we do now. Sometimes if it's too much, the ref says, weird. But he didn't deem it to be too much. And also, if the free kick was taken where it was, I don't think the defender would suddenly be alive to it, because Mabasa exploited that space between the two central defenders. So for me, I don't know if they would have adjusted quicker. I don't know. For me, there was space to be exploited. One pass, boom, and we score.
So they would have, because if the free kick was taken in the right spot, there was Stellenbosch players who were standing in front of the spot where the free kick was supposed to be taken. By the way, on a note on Stellenbosch players in terms of their reaction to that, there was someone who was supposed to be in front of that ball. Regardless of the fact that that ball was taken from the wrong spot, there was supposed to be a defender who was supposed to be in front of that to delay that, because anything could happen. But that is not something that was supposed to happen. That was absolutely the most shocking call you've seen in a long time in a cup final. The problem, though, is, and the sad thing is, that is a shocking call in a long list of shocking calls that you see in our local game. In terms of Orlando Pirates, right? Yeah, they are not to blame, because you take that free kick quickly. If there's a whistle and they bring it back, you'll bring it back and you'll start again. But they play, they take a chance, they play, and it is a goal, and there's no reaction from the referee, and okay, you know. So I don't think the blame goes on Orlando Pirates. They didn't do anything wrong there. That whole action was wrong, and the person who's supposed to adjudicate whether it is or not, let them have it, because that was a ridiculous call. That ball was so far off the mark of where the foul took place. Like
just 2 meters.
Chuck, so far. It's not just 2 meters, Chuck. Even if it is just 2 meters, 2 meters. That was more like 5 meters away. It was blatant. That's why I say it was blatant. You know it was not supposed to be taken from the... If you're going to take a free kick not in the place of the foul, you can take it behind. You cannot advance it that far ahead. And for the ref to let them get away with that, whereas he is looking at the person who's been fouled, literally, and there's no ball in anywhere near his vicinity, how he can conclude in his own mind that, oh yes, that is fine, I have no idea. Abongile Tom, that was absolutely shocking, and he should be ashamed.
At least if it was the same referee, right, who robbed Chiefs the previous weekend, then you can say this guy's got a problem. But if it's more than one of them, then you're looking at the whole body of referees and you're wondering, are you going to find the right guy next week and the week after that? But beyond that, Jay, I think Pirates were the stronger side, and I think maybe then the 3-1 scoreline is a bit flattering. But maybe 2-1 winners makes a bit more sense. We dominated the second half.
No, Jack, it doesn't. Like we needed to find out. We needed to see, because we probably would have gone into extra time. And as I'm saying,
we were going to win that
Stellies
anyway.
also have played a lot of games this season, but what happens in that extra time? Oh, do you have tiring legs on this side or on that side? Or anything can happen, because that third goal is a result of the fact that Stellies were 2-1 behind and were chasing the game and had committed that many bodies forward. If it's 1-1 going into the dying moments of the game, maybe they play for extra time, and we go into extra time. Pirates could have won it in extra time. I'm not
They would have won
I'm
it
not
in
here
extra
saying
time.
that they were not going to win it, definitely. I wonder they would have.
I'll tell you this. We were at the watch party, right? And because we were seated in the front, the cameraman came to me when Mujela scored that spectacular on some Here's a Distraught Pirates fan. I said to the man, come back when we equalize, and come back also when we score the winning goal. And my man was humble enough to say, well, Daniel, you called it. That's because I trust my team. This is our cup. Like, I'm not even too sure who's our sponsor now. Is it Vodacom? Is it MTN? There's a conflict of interest there, but now we just keep winning, So they just keep giving us money.
Saleh, who's got like a tattoo of the MTN8 Cup on his calf, and because he comes alive in this tournament. Like, this is his tournament, this is Pirates' tournament actually at this point, and the cups in J are like Pirates are a domain where Pirates come alive. And the thing is, like, if I do give kudos to Orland Pirates, is that this team knows how to win cup finals. They know how to win the big game, and you just know that there's a belief there. We are behind, but we're going to come back. We are tied, and we are going into the 90th minute, and there's an opportunity for us to come alive. Like, this is our moment. This is where we come to the fore. We've been here. We've done it. We've got the trophies and the medals to show for it. We are in this position again. And guess what we're going to go do? We're going to go do what we do. Famously, Manchester United at Fergie time. And this is like Pirates time, in cup finals. In like, I think back at Loftus Chukwuemeka does his thing against Kukuni. I think Mbobela, the young man Mufukeng does Zungu dirty. Zungu has never seen it. Sundowns again, and they win that one. And here we are again, right? The circumstances are fraught with things that shouldn't have happened, but where we found ourselves, Pirates do score that late goal, and then Mufukeng once again comes on and he ices it also in injury time. So this team is a special bunch under this coach, under these circumstances. As I'm saying, when the lights get brightest and the pressure is turned up high, they rise to the occasion. And as you say, I think as well, this is them being tuned in and focused in on the moment where let's try to take it quickly. And they exploit the situation, and they get the win. My closing comments on the referees, it's a referee issue. The villains here are the referees and the people who back and train the referees. Our referees are not fully professionalized. I want to say that will make a difference, but then I know they professionalize in England and they have VAR in England, and look how terrible still it is, right? But that's an anomaly, because everywhere else in Europe they know how to use VAR and the decisions aren't as shocking. My confidence here in South Africa, Chuck, is not that high. I honestly feel like we'll get VAR and it's going to look more like what happens in England, because our officiating just is not good, right? Hopefully, if you do get them professionalized, if SAFA does pay requisite salaries where they can have this be their profession and they're not doing anything else, and they just keep training and upgrading and educating themselves and becoming better in this one craft, maybe we see better officiating throughout the league. But as I'm saying, at this moment, my confidence is not high, and in this moment, like it's a terrible thing for me to watch the PSL week in, week out, because these things come up in the big games, right, or the big teams. But you watch any game, it happens. If you watch the Hollywood Bets Super League, it happens there. If you watch the NFT, that is absolutely terrible. And over there, I'm pretty certain there's still envelopes of a certain color that are changing hands. So it's a problem. It's like it's endemic. It's a problem throughout this country at every level, where our officiating is not good, and SAFA need to do something about it, because it's ruining our game.
No, I stand with you on that one. But I mean, I guess as a benefactor of such issues over the weekend, I won't complain too loudly this weekend, but I'm totally with you. Shout out to Pirates for making it back to back to back. I hope this makes Stellies strong for their league campaign and for their African travels as well, because I think we need these teams to go deep and to make a noise, because consistency is only as consistent as it is applied, and we need them to run in the league and chase Mamelodi Sundowns, and then we have an interesting league again because they are still on song. Speaking of comebacks, Jay, this was not the only comeback that we saw on the weekend. If we cast our eyes to England, in the English Premiership, Brighton came back from, what was it, 2 goals down at some point?
Yeah, 2-0 down.
To 3-2. They scored 3 as well, but there was no help from the referee. It was help from Spurs defenders because they were sleeping, and what a second half they had, man, and they went all the way. My question to you is that, and said loud and proud, right? I'll give you 2 pointers. One, he said that in his second season he always wins something. Number 2, he was asked before the match started that both teams seem to be playing this open style of play. Are you going to do something about it? And he's like, no, it's entertaining for the fans. Hopefully we're on the right side of the result. Same old Spurs as we saw last season, where they play well, but somehow deep in the match they lose that. Question number 1, Jay, were they naive, or is it just a result of playing the way they do that? At some point you are going to leak goals, just so happened to which they leaked 3 goals all in the second half. And 2, is Ange still the right man? Because seemingly he's happy with this, but it's not working for Spurs. Or is it the DNA of the club?
So those 2 questions, they answer one another, right? Is Ange the right man to do what? Is he the right man to win a trophy for Spurs? Is he the right man to lead them to a league title? Is he the right man to get them back into top 4? Because where Spurs are concerned, right, the marketing machine that is the English Premier League shines brightly, has shone the brightest around Spurs, because Spurs are in the Big 6. Why are they in the Big 6? Their attachment or their involvement in that is there's an association of being part of the North London derby against Arsenal. Arsenal, who've won Premier League titles. Arsenal, who are one of the protagonists of the early parts, in particular, of the English Premier League, and they've done maybe not as well in Europe as when you think about the absolute big names from England like Liverpool and Manchester United. But the greatest player, arguably, that the Premier League has ever seen has played for Arsenal. They've got an invincible season. And here comes Spurs, who, because they are neighbours and because they are success adjacent, now they are within those main storylines. They've only won 1 trophy in the last 15 years. They haven't not won a league title in over half a century. And yet they're part of the Big 6. Because they are in the right part of the country. They do have like a strong fan base. They make a lot of money because they've got a shrewd ownership group. And as I'm saying, they are success adjacent because they're next to an Arsenal. There's no Big 6. There is no Big 6. Like, Spurs do not belong there. And because also, yes, the other thing is because they've had a purple patch, particularly under Pochettino, along with Harry Kane being there and Heung-min Son coming into his own, where they were finishing in second place. They were looking as though they were challengers for the league title. And that little run, and all those things that I mentioned before has made them a team where we talk about them where they don't have success, or when they play with this naive style of football where the coach is talking about that they're going to win and previously he's had success somewhere else, and we are asking the question, is he the right man? Yes, he is the right man. Like, why would he not be the right man? Because he's not winning trophies. Who wins trophies at Spurs? There's no right man. There's no right man who's going to come in. Mourinho, one of the absolute greatest coaches of all time, came, and maybe he would have won that final if they didn't fire him before the final. But he didn't win anything there, right? Yeah. You had Conte, who was a serial winner prior to coming to Spurs. And within months, that man was disillusioned with his job and disillusioned with the mindsets over at Spurs. And he couldn't get them to win anything. There has been a parade of managers, big name managers, and some who are like in the middle of the way. And none of them have led Spurs to a title or consistent run where they are challenging for the absolute biggest prizes. It's a good thing that Liverpool beat them in the 2019 Champions League final. Can you imagine if they'd fluked their way to a European Cup, and we're talking about Spurs as a big team with a European Cup?
Is this now you speaking of success adjacent in relation to Spurs if they get the European Cup before you?
Exactly. We couldn't let that happen because then we legitimize they stay in the big six. So, Chuck, when I see them, right, lose a 2-0 lead to Brighton, and the stats come out that this is the 10th time. This is the 10th time in Premier League history that has happened, and it marks the most occasions that a team have been 2-0 up and have been pegged back to lose, which is Spurs. This is who Spurs are. This is their personality, and as you say, this is their DNA. So is Ange the right man? Yeah, Ange is the right man because the Spurs way is that Spurs play attractive football. You know, it's entertaining, but it's not winning football. So is it entertaining? Yes, I'm entertained when I watch Spurs. That game was entertaining against Brighton.
Yep.
Is it going to lead to them winning trophies? No. Has anything ever led to them winning trophies? No. So is Ange the right man? Yes, he is because it's entertaining, and he's entertaining while continuing to not win anything. Spurs will Spurs. It's so Spursy.
You just killed the whole argument because the whole point is like, should they be angry? You're like, no, not really, because this is who they are. Because my next question was, in comparison to someone who's actually a big six contender, Man United are all the way in 13th or 14th. They're somewhere in Lapanje, pants, right? And there's noise there because they shouldn't be there. Whereas Spurs, who are 3 points above them, or if not 2, they look like they're the better side, but actually, if you look closer, had they drawn the game last week, then they're exactly where Man United are. And when I look at Spurs personnel, I'm like, Ange had the season with Timo Werner, with Kulusevski, with Richarlison, and all those guys, and he's like, Brennan Johnson is fine, and that's all I'm going to add. Oh, and Solanke, actually. He tried to pulse their team. When I look at them attack, I'm not actually afraid because I'm like, the ball goes to Timo Werner. And Werner does what Werner does, which is a bit Spursy, right?
Exactly.
Kulusevski came in the January transfer window, finished off the season quite strongly, quite well, and since then, he's been Spursy. And Dominic Solanke seemingly has caught the Spurs bug as well because he's not hitting the back of the net. Usually, by this time for Bournemouth, he would have had 2-3 goals. He's got just the one, if I'm mistaken. So, actually, they are where they are, and he was upset at their side in terms of, we shouldn't have had a game like this. This is the first time since I've managed Spurs that my team has been so vulnerable at the back and so naive. But it's like, no, not really. It's happened a lot of times in the previous campaign, and you didn't do nothing to stop it. So I don't know with Spurs, man. And I asked that question because it seemed like there were teams who were getting it right. Because the thing that people are applauding Spurs for is that at least we know what the Ange ball is. We know what the Postecoglou DNA is, or what he wants his team to look like. We know what they want to look like, but it's not working. And no one's really saying that it's not working. It's just, oh, well, they fly high. Because Spurs, if you see who's taking their shots, it's Udogie. If it's not Udogie, it's Van der Ven. It's like, so when is Kulusevski shooting? When is Solanke in a place where he's getting the ball 2 feet to shoot? And like, it's not going to work if your fullbacks and your centre halves are there taking shots. Who's at the back? You know, so it's a very naive style of play. It is not going to yield any trophies. It hasn't worked thus far. I don't think it's going to miraculously trump organized football like you see with Liverpool, with Arsenal, with City. So I don't see any trophies coming from that part of London. That's just me, which they lost. They got clawed back from a 2-goal lead. No surprises there either.
Chuck, the thing about Spurs, right, is when you think about the best teams in England, the best teams in Europe, when you look at their squads, there is always at least a player who is, in their absolute best season, is going to be a Ballon d'Or contender. As a player, and usually there's a collection of players where you look at and you think to yourself, man, they would walk in to name the team. You know, in a best 11 of the league or of the continent, they are in with a shout. They might not make it, but they are in with a shout, right? If I give an example, like there tends to be a lot of discourse around Bukayo Saka in terms of how good he is. But he's in that conversation, right? He's in that conversation with Mo Salah, with Lamine Yamal. When you're talking about the right wingers, and that's what I'm talking about. With Spurs, they never quite get the players who get into those conversations. So when there are a players who are available, like the best players in the world are available, they're on the transfer market, and you can add them to strengthen your team and to help galvanize you towards a title tilt or the Champions League win. Spurs are not in the conversation for those players. Yeah. And this is what I'm saying. In all seriousness, as a result, we should not look at Spurs as a big team in the traditional sense that we look at Manchester United, at Liverpool, at Chelsea, at Man City, Real Madrid, Juventus, Inter Milan, those teams. You know, they are in the rung below that. as I'm saying, when when Pochettino got them to challenge for the league title, one, they happened upon a Harry Kane who absolutely is world class. You know, Harry Kane more belongs to like at the Bayern Munich than he does at the Spurs. Heung-min Son as well. He's had seasons where when you maybe squint the right way, he looks like a Ballon d'Or contender. You know, he's either world class or just below that. And even there, he was at Bayer Leverkusen. No one really went for him, and Spurs went for him, and it worked out the best it could work out with a player like that. That is not likely to happen. Like a whole lot of times, you'll get a good player, and they're not going to take the jump to being world class or near that, right?
Yeah.
So look at this transfer when the Spurs spent 65 million on a striker, and it's Dominic Solanke. Nothing against Dominic Solanke, but Dominic Solanke is not in that class of strikers with your Haalands of this world. Maybe not Haaland because he's there by himself, but you don't think he's a guy who was looked at by the superpowers of world football. And this is where Spurs would shop, because this is their brand, this is their history, this is who they are. So as I'm saying, if I'm being like very serious about it, we've miscast Spurs. Like if we think about them as a big team in the same way we think about the other big teams, then of course they continue to fail. Of course they continue to fall short. But if we think of them as who they actually are, this is right up their alley. And in their absolute best season, they'll finish in second place. More often than not, they'll be in and around the chase for Champions League spots or European spots, which is where they find themselves, right? In the middle of the table, upper middle table, and that's where Spurs belong. So I look at like the result, and I look at where they finish, and I think to myself, that's just about right.
All right, let me ask this question, right? Okay, let's say that they're properly cast as a mid-table team. And I don't know if I need to think this about United, and therefore stress. Just accept this is who you are. But Brighton coming up and getting results, getting a result against Tottenham Hotspur, and Fulham pushing City all the way as well. Does it show that maybe finally the Premier League is living up to the billing, that idea that anyone can beat anyone, or at least the teams are closer? Does this result, along with the others that I listed, does it show that maybe at this point of the season there is a bit of parity between the teams?
I think there's some parity. I don't think it's complete parity. I don't think we're going to get a Leicester in our lifetime again. And that's what a perfect outlook of parity would be, right? That in any given season, not just in any given weekend, anyone can beat anyone, but in any given season, there's a group of like 10 of the 20 teams can win the Premier League. That's not the case. Not even the big six, or if you want to take Spurs out of that, the big five. Not even amongst them in any given season, all of them are in with a chance to win the league. There's usually 2 or 3 who genuinely have a chance to win the league. But beyond that, you do have that situation that on any given Saturday or Sunday or Friday or Monday, any of these teams can beat any of these teams. And what we saw as an example with Fulham against Manchester City, at some point in that match, late on, Fulham were dominating the ball. Manchester City was sitting back in that low block, and I had a little chuckle to myself, like, okay. So when you are being attacked, the logic is to sit back and to try contain and not concede. I wonder where that tactic came from. Maybe it's just football, you know. Maybe it's like the smart thing to do. And Fulham could have won that game, but Adama Traore is Adama Traore. Yes. Will always be Adama Traore.
Who was linked to Spurs, I might add.
Who was linked to Spurs. Everything you need to know about that.
Yeah.
But yes, Chuck, you even when you look at the Aston Villa and Manchester United game, as things stand, I think a lot of people expected Aston Villa to win that game. But of course, they were playing the Champions League, and Manchester United managed to get a point from that one. Southampton took the lead against an Arsenal, and then Arsenal did show their class. So you do have those upper echelon teams where I think this season it would be Arsenal, Manchester City, and Liverpool, and they're gonna lose at some point. Liverpool were beaten at home by Nottingham Forest. You know, in a game that you don't expect them to lose, they will lose. And when you see the spattering of teams, like Fulham are a good team, Bournemouth have played some good ball. Nottingham Forest are hard to beat. Following up that win at Anfield, they went to Chelsea and managed to draw in that one. And Chelsea also were fortunate to win that one because Sanchez came away with 8 saves in that match, right? And you think of Chelsea, who have been putting some teams to the sword, but in other weeks, they don't look quite as convincing. And that's because most of the teams are very close to one another. So I do think we have the closest thing in terms of the absolute biggest leagues in the world to parity in the Premier League, particularly this season.
I think maybe you want to throw the Bundesliga in the hat as well, but those are like wild results as well, because then you get Dortmund getting beaten, Bayern drawing over the weekend, and you're like, what's Haaland? Like that. Don't put your money on like Bundesliga teams. They are properly Jekyll and Hyde at this point in time. Maybe we'll find some pattern and rhythm in terms of here who they are and here's what they're gonna do. But I wouldn't suggest that. But going back to the Premier League, I think for now that seems to be true, Che, because Liverpool are holding on against Palace as well. Eze, Mr. Sitter, if he scores, then they get a point from Liverpool. So at this point in time, man, because as you know with Chelsea, they were nowhere. I think they're fourth now. They're racking up the wins. I don't know for how long they'll stay there, but it seems like Maresca's cooking something and they might be contending, or at least close enough to be there. Arsenal had a blip. City looked like they are 5-2 a blip in most games that they play. They're not the dominant force that we all know them to be. And this is the narrative that we keep saying, that maybe this is the season because City look this way and that way and then they pull ahead. But so far, man, we're seeing Fulham step up, as you've said, because they've added Smith Rowe, or Raul Jimenez is scoring goals as well. Adama Traore is industrious as well. Semenyo is running a mark along with Tavernier and the likes at Bournemouth. So the teams are there and they're putting up a fight. I mean, Ipswich, wow, for 50 minutes, put up a fight, causing us to dream in terms of, hey, what's happening here, right?
Yeah. Leicester
City are there. And they're a presence in the league. You can't ignore Leicester City. Maybe Southampton aren't playing as well as the. I don't have to expect too much from them because they just got promoted as well. But of the sides that are promoted, I think they're the ones that are performing most poorly. But they got a lead against Arsenal, and they were there to cause some noise, but they were swatted away eventually. So I think at the moment, and then you have as much as you say that Aston Villa played in the Champions League, United played a day later in the Europa League as well. So even then,
that's true.
Even
and away
then,
to Porto.
Yeah, and both those teams looked uninspired. I don't know if that comes into our argument, because at their best, maybe there's a better assessment of what the teams look like, but they cancel each other out ultimately, and so there's more parity in that particular game. So I think, at this point in time, that is true, and the league table does tell you that in terms of that there are lots of teams clustered in mid-table with close points, and yes, it's early in the season, you expect that mathematically, but I think for the next 2 or 3 game weeks, we might see that, and then afterwards, the games and the points will stretch out, and we'll get to see who are the clear contenders. And to be clear, you're saying it's not Spurs. This is Chuck, and I'm out.